Okay, this is the last one, I swear. So, Beetlewings, an extinct tribe who was the ancestor to all Highwings and Silkwings. Nobody knows what they looked like, as there is no official design for them, but there is a popular fan-made one that the fandom seems to have adopted, made by Peregrine Silla. I think that's how you pronounce that, at least. Now, I think this design is awesome, but I kinda want to do my own thing when it comes to designing these Beetlewings. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been kind of trying to stay inside the realm of possibly realistic hybrid designs. Designs that are interesting, that can also be believable if they were plopped into the Wings of Fire world. And sure, I give some of them beards, mustaches, or extra facial spikes that aren't exactly present on any tribe, but they're not like, you know, out of the realm of possibility either. Probably. What I'm trying to get at is that when I approach designing my own Beetlewings, I'd like them to be a believable ancestor to the Highwings and Silkwings. It's not exactly going to be some grand new design or anything, I'm simply just taking what I see from the Highwings and Silkwings and kind of combining them or something. Kind of like what I've been doing already. Also, because I'm a little unfamiliar with the Beetlewings, I didn't really give them that much of a theme, but instead compiled a bunch of random prompts and asked my Discord server to vote for any of them without giving them any additional context. Little did they know, I'd be ranking them all from most to least voted and aligning them to the order of this row. So the Sandwing would be the most voted for option, and the Mudwing would be the second, and so on and so forth until the Leafwing is left with the least voted for option. Anyways, let's just get started. Before I started drawing the Beetlewing on the grid, I decided to make a few doodles of what I thought they might look like. The main idea was to make them bulky and armored, yet not very intimidating, and not too sharp and pointy. They were described as beautiful in a certain prologue, so I didn't really want to make them look too scary. I also wanted them to have short and blunt antennae, with a few exceptions here and there, and a shiny iridescent sheen on their scales. So with this Beetlewing on the grid, I wanted to make them look like a friendly giant. They were given many round and blunt features and a nice little smile. I didn't really know what colors I wanted to give them, so I just kept throwing different hues at them until something stuck. They ended up with a sort of watermelon color palette, with light and reddish pinks and cool greens. Starting off with the first hybrid, we have the Sandwing, who earned the first place vote of blue hair and pronouns. Yes, I know it's tied for first with the other one, but it was still arranged above the other one, and I had to pick a successor somehow, so because I won't be drawing the secondary Beetlewing row, I decided to bend my rules a little and give these hybrids their more iconic features, such as the sail on the Sandwing. This guy was also given sharper bent horns with an extra pair on their cheekbones. Their colors were meant to be mostly dusty and dull, with, of course, a blue sail and other blue accents. I kind of loosely based their colors off of the Demi-Boy flag, except all I did was make the grays and whites warmer to make it look a little more Sandwing-esque. The Mudwing ended up with the prompt 1,000-yard stare, and naturally got just that. Their face was heavily based off of the one I made on my concept sheet, with a slightly wider face, feathery antennae, wider horns, and eyes that are not focused on anything in particular. The colors for this one were a little aimless, so like the Beetlewing earlier, I just kept throwing around shades and hues until something seemed to work. They were completed with a kind of sunset color palette, with a few blobby heart-shaped patterns and yellow stripes down their underbelly. I ended up with a somewhat difficult prompt for the Skywing, which was simply the word scrunkly. I didn't really know how else to work with it, so I asked an outside source for a random cat image, and this is what I ended up with. So I heavily relied on the cat's face shape and expression. The Skywing ended up with a somewhat blunt and wide face with big ears, whisker-like antenna, and a scar divot on the front of their lip to mimic the cat's mouth. Continuing this trend of color aimlessness, I chose a bright red base color for this design and began building off of it from there. I decided to give this design a pattern that could resemble the cat as well, prominently on their head and neck. The Seawing was based on, I quote, "Mwahahaha, uahahaha." Based on that, I aimed to make them look evil and menacing. I think I got the evil part down, just not the menacing bit. They were drawn with many twisting and curly features and an evil smile, but at the end of the day they just kinda look like they have malicious intent, which I guess works too. The colors I chose here didn't end up being the final ones because I wasn't too happy with how they looked. They seemed a bit too joyful and energetic for someone who's supposed to be a little evil. I eventually turned to that common color palette for cartoon villains, green and purple, which worked out a little better in the end. The Icewing was given the prompt "a worthy opponent." With that prompt I intended to make them look intimidating and strong. They were given many sharp and spiky features, such as with their tusks, the sharp protrusions in their horns, and the evenly spaced spikes along their neck. Originally, their colors were supposed to be mostly warm with bright blue spots outlined in dark brown, but when I completed the coloring, it looked a little too similar to the Sandwing from earlier. I later shifted it to be kind of the opposite, giving it a light blue body and yellow spots outlined in a dark muted cyan. Based on the prompt red hair streaks and eyeliner, the Rainwing was drawn to look a little emo and edgy. Most of that is shown in their coloring, but here I tried to show that with their bored expression, limp frills, and piercings. I also decided to give this design a somewhat antler-shaped antenna with an extra frill thing on the top of its head. The colors were all dark and dull, with the only bright color being the reddish pink that stripes their frills and horns, colors their diamond patterns, and lines the underside of their eyes. This Nightwing was a weird one because apparently the prompt head empty is exactly that. No thoughts, no ideas, my head was practically empty. So I just drew. There was no real reasons as to why they look the way they do now. The only thing I can say is that I wanted their expression to look as equally confused as I was when drawing them. A little later into the drawing process though, I just decided to barely base them off of some beetle references I found. The horns were then shaped to look like pincers or beetle horns or whatever they are, and the plates on their neck were shaped to look a little like a beetle elytra. They were given mostly dark and desaturated colors. I was kind of going for just a simple black beetle feel with this, but I decided I should break it up a bit with some red-orange fades along their scale plates. I also gave them lighter gray rectangles along their neck as a trait from their Nightwing side. The Highwing was based on the prompt lemon, skidivika. So naturally I made an attempt at making it look like it ate a lemon. I gave them a jagged beak and a somewhat compressed face with narrow eyes. Everything else I gave this design was just whatever I felt like giving it, like the sharp curved horns and jagged plate patterns. I also purposefully gave this design a slightly larger forehead horn based on their Highwing side. It wasn't hard to decide on a lemon-esque color palette for this design. They were given a light yellow base color with lime greens layered over it. I also gave them an alternating green and yellow pattern across their neck and dark green stripes to fill the empty space. The Silkwing ended up with the prompt dancing queen, so I aimed to make them look like a celebrity or someone famous or something of the like. They were drawn to be the most slender out of the row, with the long curving features present in their horns, antenna, and posture. They were also given plates along their back that extend at the ends to look a little feathery, along with a multitude of golden horn rings to possibly allude to their wealth. They were colored brightly and in a way to make them stand out a little, with a magenta base and bright cyan accents. They were also given wavy swirls along their back to make them look a little more elegant. Finally, the Leafwing ended up with the prompt "Ah hell nah." Basically, this led me to draw them looking intimidating and unapproachable, like they could beat you up at the slightest inconvenience. They were given a very bulky body with a big face and triangle-shaped fins that run down their head and spine. I gave them a bunch of scars and vines draped over their body to make them seem a little more wild and troublesome. Their colors were supposed to be mostly dark, with lighter magenta accents here and there. In the end, I thought it looked a little too similar to the Beetlewing on their right, so I shifted it to be the opposite, like the Icewing. With the final coloration, they were given a dark magenta body with lighter green stripes and flecks along their neck. They were also given a veiny pattern along their fins and wings to make them look a little creepier. And with that, the somewhat impromptu Beetlewings are complete. They're honestly a somewhat fun row to mess around with, as I've never really drawn a Beetlewing before, unless you count that one time when I tried to draw Sunstreak. He kinda looks like more of a Silkwing though, but it's whatever. Like all these other designs, they will be going into free raffles on my Discord server, link in the description. These raffles will hopefully take place on the 22nd of July, but it might be delayed depending on whether or not this video is out on time. You can probably check the comment section if this video is not out on Sunday. So yeah, that should be it for the hybrid series. I'd honestly love to veer into different content now that all this is over, as it's been absolutely taking over my upload section. So look out for whatever I might make next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see ya when I see ya. See ya.